Hey everybody, welcome to Performance Anxiety. Thank you for joining me once again for another awesome show with some amazing creative people. This week we feature the group Hacke Danielle. If that sounds familiar, it could be for a few reasons. Danielle de Picciotto was a guest on an earlier show a few months ago. Or maybe you recognize Alexander Hacke from Einstruzende Neubauten. I apologize to Alexander and Danielle for still not being able to pronounce that very well. We cover a lot of ground on this show, just like Alex and Danielle do in their daily lives, because they're literal nomads. They both have an extensive, distinguished career in music and art. So how did Nick Cave bring them together, and what do Portishead and Beyonce mean to them? More importantly, how is their new album, The Current, a little bit different from their previous work? Check them out at Hacke Danielle on social media. Follow us at Performance ANX. Check out our merchandise at performanceanx.threadless.com. Subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with people that you know. You know you wanna. Now let's get a little crazy with Hacke Danielle.
Hi, this is Alexander Hacke and
Danielle de Picciotto
of Hacke Danielle, and you are listening to Performance Anxiety.
And we are presenting The Current, our new album.
I had a weird dream, and it involved you guys last night.
All right.
Okay.
And yeah, that's usually an awkward start to a conversation, so I'll keep it going. I do this podcast from my room. So I've got I live in Virginia. I've got a 2-story house with a deck on the back. I usually do it from my bedroom, which is upstairs. In my dream, I'm doing the podcast. So first of all, I'm dreaming about doing a podcast, which is ridiculous in the first place. But I'm doing it on the back deck, and it's normal to me in my dream. But somehow all my podcasting equipment, all the electronic equipment I use is hydro-powered. So I have to go and hook this attachment in my dream up to my shower head upstairs, run it out the bathroom window, down this little track that my son has for his like Matchbox cars, his little Hot Wheels metal cars. And then somehow it attaches to my soundboard and my laptop, and everything runs that way. So I'm about to do the podcast, and then I wake up for some reason. So I get settled, I go back to sleep, and it kind of resumes with my dad showing up, saying, "Hey, I know you've got this podcast to do. I've got a great place for you to do it." Like, well, I'm having Danielle and Alexander on. I don't know if I'm going to have time. So he goes, no, come on, let's pack it up. So we pack it up. And he's driving me to some weird location, and then you guys start calling me. And I'm like, I'm not even close to being. I have no idea where I'm going. I'm not.
Well,
all my stuff is packed in my dad's car, and I'm trying to answer the phone and explain to you guys. And yeah, I know we're supposed to be talking right about now, but I'm in my dad's car driving to somewhere, and I'll have to let you know when I get there. I hope it's so. It was just weird dream.
Was it one of those that seem really real?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. When I'm on tour, I dream about being on tour. But yours seems to be a very visionary, progressive dream, because apparently hydrogen is the answer to quite a few questions.
That's the only thing I've ever been visionary about. That's I'll tell you that for sure. But
maybe it's also like the dream about no cables, like all those cables you were just entangled in.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. Maybe it was foreshadowing my trouble of me getting tangled up.
Exactly, because we dream of that all the time, a life without cables.
Oh, gosh.
If we didn't have to schlep them around all the time, we'd have like 50 pounds of luggage less, I think.
Oh, yeah, but you guys are kind of doing it as far as a lot of people compared to a lot of people, I guess I should say, because you are nomadic and you're not tied down to anything. Me, I've got to worry about my wireless and the cable coming in and everything concerning a house, and it's a lot. And you guys have just cut that completely.
Well, you still have cables on tour too.
Oh, that's
sadly.
true. I didn't even think of that. That's true.
And
Yeah.
responsibilities, responsibilities are very portable these days.
You make a very good point, Seth. Well, it's been great talking to you. I'll let you know when the show's out.
Thanks so much.
All right, so as I said, Danielle has been on before. We need some great detail about your career. What I want to know now is a little bit more about Alexander's history, because you were, I believe, one of the founding members. And please, my German is almost non-existent, so I'm going to butcher this horribly, which I'm sure you hear a lot. But now it's my turn to probably offend you. Einstruzende Neubauten.
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad at all.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all the German I know besides ein Bier. So, but you joined.
Yeah, bitte to be polite, I suppose.
So you joined the band at, was it age 14 or 15?
Yeah, well, I started hanging out with the guys when I was 14, and and then I started playing with them around that time too.
Okay. Were you always a musician up, at that tender age? Have you been playing music for a long time at that point?
Well, around that time, I had decided that I wanted to be a professional musician. I cleared out my locker in school and never went there again. And from that moment on, I was a musician, I suppose.
Yeah, you were. Definitely.
And the band, which I blew my load there doing the saying it that one time. I got it right, somewhat right. So I'm not going to try it again. The band has been.
You can say Neubauten.
Oh,
Neubauten. Just say Neubauten. That's
Neubauten.
fine.
Okay, perfect. All right, so Neubauten, they've very revolutionary at the time, using custom-built instruments, instruments made out of scrap metal, tools, using noise in the music. Was that the plan from the start?
Well, we still do use all kinds of materials and appliances and that, but I suppose we from the start already we wanted to be more extreme than the underground music that was apparent at the time. We were kind of bored with punk rock that was just like good old rock and roll, just played a little faster and a little more aggressive. But there wasn't much really innovative stuff going on at the time. Plus, we didn't have a whole lot of money, so the drummer Andrew, he had to sell his drum kit in order to be able to pay his rent. And
wow.
And so the drum kit was surely replaced with things that we nicked from building sites.
Oh, wow. Now, when you guys played out, was it hard to move that kind of stuff, to recreate those sounds on a stage?
It still is. Heavy. They have like this one thing that's what is it, an airplane turbine?
A jet turbine.
How heavy is that?
It's like 200 kilos.
400 pounds.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So you kind of have to check to make sure that the stage can handle your instruments.
Yeah, well, the jet turbine, funnily enough, isn't flying with us.
Yeah, I imagine you'd get a little pushback on that. Yeah, we want to bring this jet turbine on stage for one song.
Well, we do in Europe, if we can load it in a van, then,
Oh my!
we will bring it out. But
Wow.
you have backliners, and they're strong and sober.
Well, that's
Poor
good.
guys.
You got to make sure those guys are pointing everything in the right direction.
Right.
Man. So were you guys making the instruments yourselves, or were you having them made?
We've always been researching in materials, and also the idea of repurposing an object, is very dear to us. Like we're on tour somewhere, we drive through, say, Zagreb or Budapest or something, and there'll be like an object dividing the lanes of the road,
Okay.
and made of plastic or something like that. And we drive by and we think like, oh, this looks interesting. It probably does sound very nice. So we stop and steal it. And most of the times it turns out that it actually does sound very nice. And by repurposing it, we give that object a new life, that object that before was, just leading a very, frustrating life, dividing two lanes, like somewhere in a city, Budapest, now becomes a jet setter, and is traveling around the world, and is admired by thousands of beautiful women everywhere.
See, maybe you can do that with my podcast. Just turn me into a jet setter, because right now I'm just sitting in my bedroom in Virginia. Oh, man. But that's something you still do then? Is that something that you brought into Hacke de Picciotto as well? Using found items to make music?
Not that much. The thing with us is that we have to be very effective with everything that we do. So we
effective meaning weight-wise.
Yes.
Because when we tour, we do not have roadies, and we do not have anybody that's strong. It's only us two, so we basically can only take what we two can carry, and we've pretty much achieved reaching the absolute limit of what you can carry.
Yes. We travel with scales, and our luggage is always maxed out.
Yeah.
So the ground personnel at airports, like when they see us coming, they're always, getting very excited. Ooh, we're gonna fleece those people, and then they get very frustrated when they find out that our luggage is like always exactly on 50 pounds, not a gram more or less.
Yeah.
Now, you got to be careful when you travel with scales in the U.S. because they automatically assume you're dealing drugs. So, tip from performance anxiety: be careful when you're traveling with scales. So, Danielle, you moved to Berlin in 1987 from the U.S. You picked up and moved and began singing with Space Cowboys, co-initiator of the Love Parade, and this is stuff we've talked about. If anybody wants more detail on that, definitely go check out the show you did with me a few months ago. Briefly, let's just touch on that a little bit. What made you move to Berlin from the U.S. and how did you get started singing and initiating the Love Parade? I know it's a tall order to ask you to do that briefly. We did a whole show on that, but the best you can.
Well, funnily, all three of those things kind of happened by accident. A friend invited me to Berlin to visit her. I went to visit her. She was living in a huge, amazing loft where somebody was just moving out, and I couldn't move in. And it only cost 30 marks, which back then was about $15 a month. And coming from New York, I was like, I'm staying. That's kind of how I came to Berlin. That's like a really super short version of it. And and how I started singing with Space Cowboys was also kind of a coincidence because they were friends. We all worked in the same clubs. And one day they asked me if I wanted to sing with them. And I was like terrified because I've been doing I learned music when at a very early age, like piano and violin, and like around 5 or 6 years old. And I had to do like shows. And they always went wrong. Like either I would forget what I was supposed to play and I would trip, or I would, just like these horrible things that happen to children when they're on stage. So I had terrible stage fright. And so when they asked me if I wanted to sing for them, I said yes, because I was so terrified of it. And I thought I have to do it because maybe that'll help me get rid of this fear. And so basically the first thing they wanted me to do for the first show was just stand on stage and scream, "There's life on Mars." And that was actually kind of fun. And I wasn't scared. So I was like, okay, this is a good way of going about doing it. So I stayed and we continued and I became the singer. And only very much later I asked them, so why did you actually ask me? And they said, well, because you'd recorded that album with somebody else. And I was like, that wasn't me. That was somebody else called Danielle. So it turned out they asked the wrong person, but that's the way I got into the band.
I love that story. And how did the Love Parade begin?
And the Love Parade started because, that was early, it was 89, sorry, when this kind of new music was coming over the horizon. And my then boyfriend was very interested in, it was like the beginning of acid house and techno and stuff. And we had always been interested in parades, like going to Brazil to see one of those parades. We somehow always liked the idea of wearing these crazy costumes and dancing to wonderful music in the street, especially because it looked like it always was beautifully sunny. And in Berlin, it's usually not that sunny. So we had always thought going down there and doing that. And then one day he came home. He was a DJ, or he is a DJ, still is. He came home and he said, you know what? I had an idea. Instead of going to Brazil, why don't we just do our own parade and dance to this cool new music? And I was like, that sounds good. I can do like costumes for it and stuff. And then because Berlin is such a city that has such a high tradition of demonstrations, we said, well, actually, why don't we just, because we were still, the wall had not fallen by then.
Right.
We were still surrounded by a wall. And we said, well, why don't we actually do a demonstration and kind of like a demonstration for something instead of against something, and do a demonstration for music, because music can cross all barriers and fly over all walls.
Right.
And, so do like a positive demonstration and dance down the streets to our music. So we did that. And the first time, not very many people came. A lot of people came to make fun of us, actually. But when they saw how much fun we were having, they said, "Oh, can't you do it again? We'd like to participate next time."
Yeah. You look how silly you look. Can we join you next year?
Exactly. And so then, the first time I think there were like 150. The second time there were 1,500. And by the fifth time, there were 1.5 million. So that became very successful. But I quit when it became that many because I don't like big crowds.
Yeah, that's got to be hard to get a handle on.
Yeah. I mean, it became like a huge kind of company. I mean, the Love Parade, there were 5 people that were doing it and 100 people that were working for it and stuff. So, but that was after I quit because I'm just more into experimental underground stuff, and I just like crowds.
Yeah, and anything that has 1.5 million participants out in the streets, it's not. I don't know if that's considered underground anymore.
Exactly. I'm like not that mainstreamy.
Yeah. So how did the two of you meet?
Well, we basically met pretty shortly after I moved to Berlin, because the place I moved into was a huge factory loft. And one of the guys that was living there was Roland Wolf. He was the keyboarder of Nick Cave.
Okay.
And he was one of Alexander's best friends.
Well, I guess, when did you start making music together? Because if that was 87, then...
No, well, like we met, and actually before I met Danielle, before I actually was introduced to her formally,
Were you formally introduced to her?
Danielle? Yeah, Alexander Danielle.
Yeah. I remember seeing her standing at a bus stop all decked out in black pleather with a beehive.
Oh, wow.
So I was very taken by that creature. So when I finally met her, I was very taken by her already. And and so we've been hanging out in the same scene for almost 25 years, always involved with other partners, until it so happened that we both, became available to each other, and then we started going out with each other. And
in 2001.
In 2001, yes.
Okay.
And
so I know all of his ex-girlfriends, and he knows all of my ex-boyfriends.
that can be good.
Yeah,
I think. My wife knows none of mine, which is So you started making music together.
immediately.
Immediately?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. We started doing like audio visual projects together. And in the beginning, it was more like these art kind of happenings where Danielle would do projections and all kinds of installations and setups, and I would provide strange soundscapes and stuff.
Your specialty.
Yes, or I would be like a human jukebox, and He once did a karaoke show where he basically sang. Like he was DJing, but he was singing all the vocals.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah, for a whole opening, like for a whole evening of an opening, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was like a personality disorder karaoke thing. I wouldn't let anyone else sing, so I just sang all night.
Yeah, so
I love that.
So he's like, what were you singing? You were singing like
all the classics.
Yeah,
all the classics.
Yeah, seriously, it was amazing.
Oh my gosh!
What songs?
Well, Survivor. No, not I Will Survive, of course. And Strangers in the Night. What have you? Like all the classics.
Naturally Born Woman.
Oh yes, yeah. You make me feel like a natural, like a naturally born
Carole
woman.
King. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Oh, I wish I could have heard that.
You can do a wonderful version of that, actually.
Well, I read that you also do the throat singing.
Yes.
How did you get into that? That sounds like it would just like shred your throat. How do you do that?
Well, I started as a kid. As a kid, I would amuse my classmates by talking like a robot. I have a cold right now, so it's hard. After a while, I figured that I can also sing like that. And then, during my, musical education, I learned that there is actually a singing style that applies that, utilizes this vibrating of the larynx.
Yes.
Yes.
This kind of stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, and then I just trained it. I just cultivated it, and after a while, I can just call it off. Right now, I have a cold, as I said, so it's not.
Well, it still sounded amazing. That one, not so much. But it's funny because I always associated that with traditional folk music from like Mongolia and Eastern Europe and all. And I heard, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, there's a Mongolian throat singing metal band called Tanger Cavalry, and their songs they throw that into like all their heavy metal songs. It's really weird, but I love it.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's quite
that sounds great.
There's quite a few Tuvan rock bands now. Tuva is the official name of the area. But what I do really is more, in order to justify what I'm doing. It's more rooted, I suppose, in what the Inuit people, like the what you're not supposed to call Eskimos anymore,
Right.
what they're doing is like I'm working less with the overtones and more with just the pure vibration of the larynx. And Inuit music to me is very interesting too, because they don't have any melodies.
Oh,
none whatsoever.
I haven't heard any. I'll have to look into that.
And they and another great thing that they do is like it's particularly Inuit women or older Inuit women. What they do is they play this game where they breathe into each other's mouth. And who has stopped because they cannot take it anymore loses the game, so to speak.
Oh my God!
Like a rhythmical thing that they do. So you should check that out. That sounds really great too. It's just like this. You hear these female voices like breathing, and then it always ends with laughter because one can't take it anymore. So that's the kind of stuff they do to keep warm.
Oh, well, I guess that makes sense. To me, it sounded like CPR, the game. I'll have to look that up, though. That's I might want to see that. I don't know. I'm not sure. But
I definitely do not do that.
No, you don't. I can.
I get dizzy too fast.
And you don't. At least you don't release that on your albums, from what I can tell.
No.
But last year, Alexander, you collaborated on one of my favorite albums of the year, and with one of my favorite artists of all time, David Eugene Edwards, on the Risha album.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Because I know he's a fan of bands like Joy Division and Neubauten, but his music doesn't, at least not with 16 horsepower, and maybe a little more with Woven Hand, didn't seem like it would mesh all with that type of music, but it's a brilliant album. How did you guys start to collaborate?
Well, we've met fairly early on in the late 90s. They were actually so we've met in the 90s sometime when 16 horsepower came through town or something, and in the late 90s or just before they disbanded, they were actually going to ask me to play bass for them.
Oh wow.
But the manager at the time, he was kind of a little messed up or something. Anyway, his email program got messed up in a way that the date was wrong. So I could always see on my email program that I had a new message, but I could never find it because the date on it was something like 1982 or something. All the way in the bottom. So I never actually received the inquiry.
Oh wow!
And anyway, so we had been friends for a while, and then we did that. Also with Danielle involved, we did that Crime in the City Solution reunion.
Yes.
And that's when we actually got to spend quite a bit of time together, and that's when that the idea for that project culminated.
It's beautiful. The music is beautiful, and I've seen some clips of the two of you playing live, and it's amazing. There's a clip that I saw I was looking at it just last night. It's you two playing Strawfoot and Breathtaker together, and it was the 16 horsepower's music is very folky, Americana, and you had your addition to the song made it a completely new song to me. and it really opened it up and made it something new. And I loved both of those tracks. It was amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, what we figured that we were both very influenced by a very how do you say a very influential American band called Suicide.
Oh yeah,
and then so we. Like I wouldn't be here doing what I do if it wasn't for Suicide. I suppose I wouldn't have survived my teenage years if it wasn't for Suicide.
That's a very strange sentence taken out of context.
As music has the ability to make you feel not alone, Suicide kind of reinforced, what I wanted to do and what I was thinking and feeling at the time. And for David, it's very similar, and Alan Vega's stage demeanor and his way of singing, which is very much influenced by, the American Bible Belt preaching, just like how Elvis Presley was influenced by this kind of style,
the gospel and the
yes, and and then Alan passed away, and we wanted to kind of pick up this notion, this idea, of having like a strong vocalist, being supported by electronic music,
right?
And given our respective backgrounds, that's how that project came to be.
Oh, it was special too because Alex started out basically being like this genius child musician in Berlin, doing like tape recording, loopings and stuff like that. Like he didn't start out as being an instrumentalist, but more almost as a electronic musician.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And this is pretty amazing short clips about him you can find online too, but he was like really young doing these crazy things. And so this was the first project actually ever since then that you performed purely electronic, right?
Yeah, and also
wow.
because David is such a virtuoso on stringed instruments, and we didn't want the project to be this kind of thing, like these two string pickers, sit together, like an outplaying each other,
Right.
So I decided, I'll just concentrate on electronic devices and electronic sounds, and leave the picking and the singing to him.
Well, it worked beautifully, in my opinion. I absolutely love that album. So,
thank you.
And like I said, the live performances were just as intense. It was really impressive to see how you transformed the older material, like the old 16 horsepower material, into something that sounded completely different. So I hope you guys do get a chance to make more music together because I love that album.
Thank you. There's also right now I posted it on the Risha Facebook site. There is a French filmmaker who is just in the process of releasing the entire Paris show.
Oh wow!
Last year as a film, and one clip of that is already online, but it will be released in its entirety very soon.
Oh, that's good news. I'll definitely have to get that. Speaking of filmmakers, I wanted to talk about the new album because a lot of the music that you two create together is very cinematic sounding. It's very wide and sweeping, and it's amazing that it's just the two of you. You guys have been traveling for 10 years now. You've closed up your house, you become nomads.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And you've been doing that for 10 years, which is just amazing to me. How has that changed how you approach writing and recording music?
Well, it changed it pretty massively in the way that somehow when you do something like that, it kind of affects your whole life because you have to give up on so many things. And on the other hand, you have to learn so many things too, because it's quite different than having a home. And so you kind of are letting down all the walls. And I guess that's what we did musically as well. So we had an album we had done before, which was called Hitman's Heel. And that was the first real album that we did together. We released it, I think it was 2011. And it was already when we were Nomads, we said we wanted to do something that basically we could play on the street. So there were no overdubs, it was just like our instruments and singing and very simple kind of song ballady stuff. And we were pretty happy with it, but somehow things changed pretty fast after, because that was when we had just started out. And then when we got back into the studio for the next album, we realized that we wanted to be a lot freer, that we didn't want like chorus, refrain, and all those things. But somehow we were recording in Joshua Tree in the desert. And I think that really kind of affected us in the way that having that huge desert in front of us kind of made us want to make a huge sound that wasn't inhibited by any kind of structure or pre-thought kind of, I don't know, like whatever. We just kind of let it influence us and let our state of mind influence us. And in that way, it became the music that we kind of do now.
Does traveling like that change how you approach the instrumentation you use? I know, like Alexander, you're very prolific with electronic music, but you're traveling a lot. I don't imagine you can have a whole lot of synthesizers and computers just hanging around, to just plug in somewhere and start recording demos and all. How has that affected how you compose?
Yeah, well, as we said in the beginning, we have to be very effective. We have to be very economical with everything that we do, with everything that we travel with. But that also forced us to reduce ourselves to the essentials of what we want to create. There's not a lot of ornaments in the music. It's all reduced to the bare essentials of expression and vibration that we want to produce. And and there's decisions like that. I could never make up my mind whether I wanted to play bass or guitar on stage. So now I got myself like a bass 6, which is basically like a guitar which is tuned 1 octave lower than a regular guitar.
Okay.
So so I can cover the whole range. So I can play guitar pitched kind of sounds and bass pitched kind of sounds, and the music just, having left the confines of architectural structures, we ventured out into areas where there is no like musical structures. Well, of course there is musical structures, but none of the archetypical, stereotypical structures, and we just make do with what happens between the two of us, the interaction between the two of us, and the vibration that the two of us create together becomes the essential center of the composition.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because that would lead to a lot of the cinematic qualities of the music, and a lot of the music sounds like it could be the basis of a movie. Do you guys get a chance to go see movies, or do you find any inspiration in theater or cinema?
Well, I mean, we're total movie freaks. We love movies. We do a lot of film music too. I mean, Alex has done film music for years, and we've been doing this crime series for 2 years now. The music for that. So, I mean, they asked us because they heard our music and they said that's perfect for music, for film. So I think it kind of, we always kind of say it's the soundtrack of the film of our lives. And so I guess that it is, we also call it, what do we call it? Cinematic drone. So
that's a perfect description of it.
Yeah.
It's great. And like off the new album, The Current, one of my favorite songs is Upon Departure, which is very theatrical, not theatrical, very cinematic and sweeping.
True.
And I love that song.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, but even though when you Google cinematic drone, you get links to these, like remote controlled devices that float in there,
It hasn't been quite established as a music genre yet.
I hadn't tried Googling that, but yeah, I can see where that would be an issue. I have a question for you about the song Third from the Sun. Is that Morse code in the beginning?
Yes.
Yep.
Ah, okay. So that's like the original electronic music in a sense then.
Yes.
So what are you guys saying in that with that Morse code?
Save our souls.
Help. It's kind of like the idea behind that song is kind of Earth, coming out of space and discovering Earth, and then in the state that we're in at the moment. And then you're kind of like, it's kind of like crying, help, help. I'm in dire need. Okay. There's something going wrong here. And then kind of, like one of those shots when you're in movies and it's like you're out in space and you go really fast zoom into some country and it's like sweeping above the earth and you see all these different people and cultures and sounds. And then so the song like really, like it's kind of like going to like an alien would experience Earth, hearing it from far away, kind of SOSing, and then coming closer and seeing all the beauty and the life that's happening there. And at the end, it's kind of like a crescendo with all of it at once, and then the spaceship goes away again, and then it hears that SOS in the end. So it's kind of like, it's such a beautiful planet, but it's in such despair.
And you use a lot of unusual instruments in your recordings, like hurdy-gurdies, auto harps, and something called, and I don't know, again, I'm learning new words talking to you guys. Kementia. Yes, I said it completely wrong. What is that thing? What is that? And when did you use any other unusual instruments recording the new album?
Well, that's a tiny little kind of cello-looking thing out of Istanbul that I got when we were in Istanbul years ago. It's very small. It's like almost as not like even smaller than a violin, and you hold it on your leg upright and then you bow it as if it was like a tiny cello. Oh. And I liked it because it has like this kind of rough sound. I'm not very virtuose at it, but I use it more as a sound instrument. And I just love anything that has a weird sound. Like I'm a sound freak. I love everything that's odd and rough and strange.
And it's so perfect for a Nomad with that size.
Exactly. And then one other thing that I played this time was another instrument I got in Istanbul, which is a kind of, how would you call it?
It's like it's called a zuma. It's a zuma. It's a Turkish clarinet, if you will. It's like a reed. Wow. It's a reed instrument, so it has a.
But it's very small. It looks more like a flute. It doesn't like clarinet sounds extremely like it's definitely not as complicated as clarinet.
But it has that squeaky sound like a clarinet, and the sound is produced very similar to a clarinet by two reeds being pressed together with your lips, like the mouthpiece of a clarinet.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like a hysteric duck going like, like that. it's really fun to play because it's so incredibly loud. It's like even Alex, who usually like it's me that is saying to him, "You're too loud." He was like, "Stop playing that. It's too loud." And tiny flute.
Yeah, it's like a
Wow.
It's like a weapon.
Really
Oh my gosh.
one.
The new album, it's a little more upbeat and faster tempos than the previous stuff you guys have done. Was that intentional?
Yeah, we kind of, we've been touring a lot and we kind of had the feeling, there's a couple of reasons. First, for one, we had the feeling on stage that up-tempo stuff was missing for us, that we felt like, it kind of, in the dynamics, we needed something to like be able to get into at the end, like somehow to do like this dynamic show, and we really felt like doing something fast. And also, I mean, the albums have kind of also been a representation of what we are, what the state of our lives or of our travels are. So Perseverancia was kind of like, this nomadic state is taking a lot longer than we thought. We thought that it would only take 18 months, and now it's almost 10 years. So Perseverancia was kind of like our way of telling ourselves, we just have to persevere. This is going to take longer than we thought. So it was kind of like a pat on the back for us saying, just look at the desert and it's endless, and maybe this travel will be endless too. So we have to persevere.
I like that you laughed when you said that. That's good.
And then Minitekel was the stage, when everything happened, Brexit and the elections 2016, which we don't want to get into detail right now, and just the way the world was changing or is changing currently, that kind of really influenced what we did on that album. And coming out of this phase, we decided that we need to infuse our art and our performance and our lives with a sort of like a hopeful, forward directed energy. Okay. So the current is about creating and kind of surfing on an energy that brings us and hopefully everyone forward.
The new album's got a more, like we said, a more upbeat feel to it. I can definitely feel a little bit more of the of your background with the Neubauten energy in it. Do you ever, especially on songs like Onward and The Banishing, do you ever think maybe one of your songs is a little too much like Neubauten, or is that just how you compose music?
I don't know. I don't think in terms of too much.
Okay.
Or anything. I mean, I don't know. It's like I serve. I serve the entity that is the music, or that is the given piece of music, and that piece of music, that entity demands certain elements for me to create. And that's what I do.
That's amazing, because I know a lot of artists, when they do different projects and they're in different bands, they don't want one band to sound too much like this other band that they're in, and so that's why I asked that question. It was just you're not even worried about that. You feel like the music is just coming through you, whatever it is, and you're just going to make it.
Yeah.
Well, Alex has actually always been, in a way, kind of not wanting to
reluctant,
very reluctant, and because people usually expect that from you, to sound like, let's say, the most known band that you have,
right.
Often, for instance, he used to DJ a little bit, and people would expect him to play,
industrial and EBM and this kind of stuff. I had this one thing where I was invited to Italy to do a DJ set in Italy, and when I saw the pictures of the club that I was going to be DJing at, which was an actual dungeon,
oh my gosh.
That was used for SM parties, and it was the kind of the goth people that invited me. I packed a orange 3-piece corduroy suit.
Yes.
And ordered a big bag of weed and played dub reggae all night. They hated me.
You just won a special place in my heart for that. I love you. That is amazing. Now, when you guys go out and you play live, do you play older music from your catalogs, or do you just try to focus on the new releases? And
we do a mixture. Okay. I mean, usually when we're doing a new album, we play, the new songs, but then we also add old songs where we think that it would fit, or our favorite ones. There's like Awake, which we love playing from Perseverancia, and Jericho from Meneteko. So there's it's of course, if we're presenting a new album, we play as many as we can from the new album, but we also do play old songs.
Yeah, it's also about utilizing the music for a sort of ritualistic approach of the evening or of the performance. There are certain songs that are obviously better to lure people into our world and to seduce them and to get them into the right mood. And then there's other ones that are very effective in getting messages across and opening up, the perceptive capabilities of the audience in order to just like hit them over the head with another one.
Do these sets change much from performance to performance?
No, not really. Was it?
Yeah, well,
no, depends.
It's no. Of course, we learn, and it's trial and error and learning by doing. But
we don't improvise very much.
If you do not put into consideration the fact that most of the music is improvised.
Oh, that's true. Okay, but within it, we don't start like a completely new piece.
You guys aren't doing like a King Crimson 25-minute improv piece that nobody has any idea what you're going to do when you start.
No, but we might improv, like the songs that we did now. I mean, like the faster ones, like when I was listening to them the other day, I thought, boy, they could be like 3 times as long and it'd still be fun. So we might do that on the new shows.
Oh, cool.
Because they really, like some of them, at least I feel like getting up and dancing. And it was like, okay, well, if that actually happens, we might just play it 3 times as long because it's fun.
Oh, nice.
But we'll see. Yeah.
Do you guys get a chance to listen to music much? I've had a lot of people on here who say, I don't listen to anything because I'm always writing music. Do you get a chance to listen to anything that's out there?
I do. I listen to a lot of music, and I listen to all kinds of music, and also as we travel so much, I like to listen to music on headphones, and I also like to be informed, and it makes me happy to support other artists. Therefore,
that's a great point.
Therefore, I research, like new releases of artists that I'm interested in, and if there's anything that I like, I'll buy it, and then of course I'll listen to it since I spent money on it.
Yeah, no kidding. For me, that's the hardest part with the downloading of music. I don't feel like I'm really supportive. I like having the artwork with with the music, and I just feel like I'm more involved if I can buy an entire album rather than just like one song at a time.
Yeah. I only buy entire albums too, and Danielle and I, we don't stream. We are very much opposed to the idea of those streaming services.
Yeah. We boycott Spotify.
And because, it's, it's the way that society is changing. It's about, it's not about owning things and having to store things anymore. I can perfectly understand that. Like even digital space to store things is getting. So it's all about, the whole society is all about having access to things, and that's all fine in various fields, but in art and in music, I think it's very important to actually go out of your way and purchase a piece of art, and then consider it as your property, that you have supported the artist by buying it, and then it's your property, and then you find a place to put it somewhere, even if it's in the digital realm. I think for me that's very important. I make sure that all my digital devices have lots of storage room where I can put things.
Well, as a former photographer for a decade or more, I appreciate that so much. Thank you for saying that, and I agree with you completely. And I know I've spent a lot of your evening here because it's evening in Berlin, but I have one more question for you guys, and you can answer it together, you can answer it individually, whichever you like. But in doing the research for speaking with you guys today, I listened to an interview with you, Alexander, from a couple of years ago, and you said that music is associated with every part of your life, especially important decisions. And when you listen, it'll bring back where you were and the feelings at that time. Do you guys have any music, not including the music you've made together, that you associate with each other?
That's an interesting question. I don't think anybody's ever asked us that.
Yes.
Yeah, I can say that. The first record Danielle gave me as a present was the first Portishead album.
Oh.
So like the early days of trip hop. And we were not even a couple then. I will always associate trip hop with Danielle, for that matter.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I kind of associate Beyonce. Because when we started dating, Alex was always listening to Survivors.
I was a big fan of Destiny's Child back in the day.
So we would always kind of dance together.
That's awesome.
I admit to it. I don't have a problem with it. I do like pop music. And,
he does.
And
he loves his Lana Del Rey.
Oh boy, there you go.
And I was a big fan. I was a big fan of Destiny's Child. I must say, the work that Beyonce did by herself, I'm not that fond of that stuff. But I love Destiny's Child.
I can't disagree. I mean, I like Kelly Rowland a little bit more myself, but that's just me. Well, guys, thank you so much for spending so much time with me. I really do appreciate it. I've kept you for about an hour, and it means a lot to me that I can get both of you guys together, talk a little bit more about the new album. Where can people follow you on social media? Where can they buy the new album and support you guys as artists?
Well, we are on Bandcamp as Hacke Danielle. We have a Bandcamp site where you can buy all our back catalog and all our recent releases.
The new album is going to be released on the 31st of January, and probably at the beginning of January, we're going to open up Bandcamp for pre-orders. So that's going to be possible. And it also is sold on the Neubauten label, Potomac, and Neubauten.org. So
on the Neubauten website,
in the
shop there, you can get it.
Exactly. So if you go to the Neubauten site, you can get it there. And it's always also being distributed by Indigo, so it will be in stores. I don't know how much there will be stores in the States, but in Europe it'll be in the stores. We'll see how successful it is.
And is there a Hacke de Picciotto social media presence?
Yes, absolutely. We're on all of the above. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and
we have a website too.
And we do have individual and our Hacke de Picciotto website. So you can find us. Once you have figured out how the name is spelled, then it's easy.
That's true. Okay, now I have one more question for you since you mentioned this, and I live in Virginia. Does Potomac translate to anything? Because I live on the Potomac River, which is spelled almost exactly the same except with a C.
Exactly. I mean, I lived in Maryland for a long time, in Columbia and DC.
Yes.
So for me, when I found out that that Neubauten had a label called Potomac, I asked the exact same question. So Alex, tell us.
Okay. Well, it's quite simple actually. In order to get your records distributed in Europe, at least, you need to have a label with a label code. And back in the day when Neubauten started producing and releasing our own records outside of a record company, we needed to purchase a label code, and it was just like a number, you know.
Okay.
And so the label Potomac was on sale at that point, and so we just bought that name and number in order to get our record onto the shelves of the distributor.
Oh, that is awesome.
And we kept that name. You know, we never bothered with changing that name. So that's what that
I
is.
think it's great because I always loved that name, Potomac, right?
Yeah.
The Potomac. I always loved that.
Yeah, and I mean, as I used to go to the Potomac River when I lived in Virginia as a kid, then we moved away, and now as an adult, I moved back, and now I take my kids there, and it's so I've always loved that. So
yeah, me too. And it was odd because somehow, you know, I've come from so far away to end up on a label that is the same name as the river where I was basically growing up. It somehow has something magical. So I always loved that, actually.
That's wonderful. I guess I will let you guys have the rest of your evening. That's a perfect way to wrap this whole thing up. Thank you guys so much for spending so much time with me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It's so much fun chatting with you. It really is.
Well, you guys are welcome back anytime. Anytime you wanna chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
And have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You have a wonderful evening. I'll talk to you soon.